Hi, I'm at the 2026 edition of Crop Diagnostic School. I'm here with Manitoba entomologist John Gavloski with Manitoba Agriculture. John, I noticed your station today is named Welcome to Weevil World. Now, I didn't see Wayne or Garth amongst your attendees, but there are three names that you want to make growers aware of this year when it comes to weevils. Now, what's going on there?
So last year, I was saying it was the year of the weevil, and this year we may even have exceeded last year as far as our claim to be year of the weevil. And not just one weevil, cabbage, seedpod weevil, and canola, that's the biggest story regarding weevils. Earlier on though, we were seeing a lot of pea leaf weevil feeding on the peas and faba beans. What we were seeing was the adults doing their notching, which means there'll be larvae feeding on nodules. But in addition to that, there's a third weevil on the scene called alfalfa weevil, which, as the name would imply, is potential concern in alfalfa. I would say there's moderate to high levels in some areas. It's probably not the same concern overall as cabbage seedpod weevil, but for some growers, from alfalfa growers, it's still a concern as well. So we have these three weevils that are causing some damage in the landscape. To put it in perspective though, there are a lot of weevils out there. In fact, weevils are the most diverse thing of anything in the world. Worldwide, there's over 5 to 6 times more weevils than there are bird species in the world. There's a very diverse group of insects. There's pest weevils. There's even beneficial weevils that have purposely been released for biocontrol of weeds. So lots of weevils, but we do have these three that are causing some economic concerns this year in Manitoba.
Okay, so the cabbage seedpod weevil, last year we're starting to make itself known a bit more than usual. Have those numbers kind of lent to what we're seeing this year, or what is the rise of cabbage seedpod weevil so much more higher in 2026?
Big increase this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
Just to put things in perspective, we first found cabbage seedpod weevil in Manitoba in 2017, okay, and we've been doing surveys every year since. Until last year, in our survey, the most we could ever find in our survey was 6 in 25 sweeps, which was about 1/10 the economic threshold. Last year, we got up to close to 200 in 25 sweeps in some of our fields, but that was just a couple fields.
Yeah.
This year, we can find economic populations in a lot of fields.
Okay.
So now we're doing 25 sweeps, an agronomist or grower would be doing 10 sweeps. Their economic threshold is 25 to 40 weevils in 10 sweeps. We can easily get that out of a lot of fields in Manitoba this year. So populations have really exploded a little bit last year, but a lot more this year. So lots of cabbage seedpod weevils right now out there.
Now, the main control measure for cabbage seedpod weevil is a pesticide, of course. Broad spectrum, if I understand, mostly is what is going to work in that type of insect. What concerns are there with that, and what are maybe some of the approaches that a grower should use if they feel that it's time to spray for cabbage seedpod weevil, and what might you recommend there?
Yeah, so the products that are being used, they belong to a class called the pyrethroids.
Okay.
And now there's a couple of them that are pyrethroid combined with something else. But the pyrethroids are really what's being used for cabbage seedpod weevil. Broad spectrum, you mentioned that, meaning broad spectrum, they kill pretty much everything. They're not selective. They're not going to be easy on bees and some other things. So you're using broad spectrum products in a canola crop that is starting to go into flower.
Right.
The ideal timing for controlling them is when you have about 10 to 20% flowering in the canola. So, dilemma. You're now spraying a flowering crop with a broad spectrum product. Flowering crops are attractive to bees. Now, canola, even if you eliminated all the pollinators, which wouldn't be great for the beekeepers, but even if you eliminated the pollinators, you'll get a decent canola yield. You'll get a better yield with pollinators. The pollinators give the canola yield a boost.
Okay.
And there's been multiple studies on how big that boost is. A lot of studies come in around the 10 to 15% range, which is quite significant. Some studies have suggested even more than that. Those may have been a bit artificially high stocking rates for bees in the field. The moral of the story, though, is you do get a yield boost from pollinators in your canola. So, how do you control the cabbage seedpod weevil, minimize their damage without negating this pollinator boost? That's the dilemma. So a couple things. First of all, scout for the seedpod weevil. Don't just assume you've got it. Not every field does. The earlier seeded fields are at greater risk because they often turn yellow first.
Okay.
So the first yellow fields in an area are going to have higher numbers, but even then, levels can vary between fields. Scout your field. If you're above threshold, it makes sense to control them. If you're not at threshold, you don't need to be spraying. Now, if you do need to spray, and you can do it, evening spraying or very early morning, late day or evening preferred, will be easier on bees, because honeybees and a lot of bees will go back to their hives or nests in the evening and re-emerge the next day. So anything you can do to avoid spraying when the bees are actively foraging will help. So late day is better if you can do it.
Okay, perfect, yeah. Part of the challenge being, unfortunately, too, it's been so wet, so farmers have had to go in and spray when they felt the weather window was in their favor. So that's also a challenge to kind of work around that as well.
Exactly, yes. People kind of have to spray when they can. Also, there'll likely be a lot of aerial spraying because some fields are just going to be too wet to really get into. Planes are going to be getting booked up. They may not always be able to spray late in the day.
Within those
so
time frames,
that's
yeah.
another big challenge. We do not have anything selective, though, that we can recommend to ease that concern.
Perfect. Okay, thanks for your time, John. Good seeing you again at Crop Diagnostic School.
Thank you very much.
Okay.